What is up YouTube? How are you all doing? I'm back with another video, hopefully a short one, but I have a feeling this will take longer. Today we are turning these two artworks into these two. Stick around to figure out how I did it with a few short tips and what to look out for. I know there's like a million artists these days who do these kind of things on YouTube these days, but I figured I would give my own audience a chance to get their art critiqued, because I do this anyways. Like, people send me their art and I critique it, just not in video form. I just scribble over it and explain on Discord. Sometimes crazy people even pay me for mentorships, so I go on Discord call and explain it live to them. But today we're going over these two artworks, and yeah, let's get into it. I will use Photoshop today for this, but the program really doesn't matter. And the first thing I like to do is make a new value checker layer. What it basically is, it's basically a just completely white layer set to color. For me it's in German, but for you it will be called color. This layer actually shows you the values instead of colors, and that way you can clearly identify what areas need to be separated from each other a little bit more. It's just a check I like to do with my own art, and it really does help. If you try scrolling out, most artworks won't be visible that much anymore, it won't be that clear. Our goal is to improve it. We don't need to zoom out this much, but it's clearly this big on my screen, and there's still areas that kind of get lost while looking at it. With the value check layer on, I can clearly see where those areas are. For example here, I mean, it is visible, but once you scroll away, it gets a little bit lost, especially here, like the hair and the body. I mean, with color, sure, you can still see it, but what happens in areas like these, like the eye? Like, has anyone yet noticed that there's like a little thing on top of the eye? Because once you scroll away, the letters are also very hard to see, and especially here it just gets lost. Like, the values need to be separated more. Background from foreground, letters from everything else. You need to visually separate everything in your scene, and it has to be clear. How clear depends on what kind of style you want to do, but if this is going to be something promotional, something where you want people to notice, like something you want people to look at and they clearly have to see your characters, then 100% make sure that your values are very visible and very clear, and it's quite easy to check and it's quite easy to fix. So let's hop in and fix the values right away and then see where the next flaw is. Alright, I've done a few value improvements. I didn't want to mess with it too much because I don't know if it fits his style or not. But basically you can see it's a little bit different. And I would like to think that especially the hands, which I later just noticed that they aren't huge hands, they're just foreshortened, like closer to the viewer and camera, I believe. That is a little bit of an issue because I haven't noticed that until much later, and I only noticed it because that blue guy looked familiar, because I've drawn it once before for a giveaway. He won the painting. So yeah, anyways, I made the line work a little bit thicker, and I made sure to separate this area, like behind the hand, from the hand, so it looks like there's air and space in between. Like, if they're shaded the same, they might as well be like right next to the body, but if there's like little aerial perspective is what I want to call this, it's separated and it looks like nicer. Like, if I turn on the value check and I look at it, these colors here are basically the same as these, and these are definitely the same as these. So if they're right next to each other, if you take a short glance and imagine someone is scrolling through Instagram and they only look at it for a second, they will not notice that the hand is closer to the camera. So you can take a look at what I did. If I turn it on, you can clearly see that it's no longer the same value. It's quite a bit different from here and here. And I even added a thicker outline because I tried to scale it. Like, if the outlines are really thin at the head part, like imagine if the head came closer and the outlines will also be bigger. Like, It sometimes can help for me foreshortening because I just noticed it later. Another area I touched is the hair. You can see here, it's quite similar, the value from the background to the hair, but in mine, it's a little bit darker on the top. So on the first, like if you take a quick glance at it, the hair will not stand out as much, but if I turn it on, you will at least notice this upper area. And here I made it brighter, even though that contradicts what I just said, but I wanted it to stand apart from the shoulder blade or the shoulder pad, whatever. It's quite the same again, like this area, let me turn this on, like this is the same as this thing here, so it blends a little bit too much in my opinion, and I just made the outline a little bit thicker. It's even a different color, so it doesn't look like a thicker outline, it's just more blended in together with the artwork. But it stands out from the background a little bit better. And I made this part here brighter, so there would be a bigger difference in contrast between this and this, because this is a little bit more in front again, and if it's the same color, it just looks flat. This is how you get more 3D look, like a more 3D-ish look in your art. I always get the question, how do I do that? That's basically one of the tricks. Like there's many little different things and tricks you have to consider. This is one of them. And on the other side, I hadn't had so much issues because the hair is already much darker than the background. And here the arm is also much darker. This was an issue for me because here it's the same color as I mentioned. And I see how much brighter it is, but if I turn this off, it's not that bad. Like it's still noticeable as his body, it's still visible. But the hand, which is really more important than his hip, stands out much more and you see it. And like I haven't noticed the fists at first. I first looked at the upper body, and you really want the secondary thing to look at the like it should be the hands in this case, I think. I don't know what your goal was, Cole. That's what I think it was. So I made them separated from the entire piece a little bit more. And really the legs, like here, there was no need to show them. Like you can indicate that they are there, but it's just more detail and more confusion. And I just like blended them in. You can still see that they are there, and it's cool to see them, and you have to show that they are there, I guess, if it's part of the character. I personally don't like having like so much detail at the bottom or like in the outer area. And ideally, maybe I can do it later, I would blur stuff that is not so not so necessary to show, and that will only confuse the viewer. And the last thing I did to improve the values was the text. Like as I said, this little I dot thingy here up top is barely visible. You can see it if you look at it, of course, but on first glance it's not there. And what I did is I added a little gradient on top behind the text. It's not much, but it's something, and it adds something. And the little dot on the I is better visible. It's getting much darker, but this is where the color comes in. With color, it's more visible. But also, another thing that could improve it, but I think I suggested this to you on Discord when you were in the process of making this artwork, I would make an outline around the text, but I think you were against it for some reason, if I recall correctly. So I just didn't bother here. I made these few things, and I added a little bit of a 3D effect, like it's really not that much. Helps the letters stand out a little bit more again. You could even go in there and like make it white. Like let's just make it a little bit stronger to prove a point. Like this already almost looks like the Doom logo. You know, you could do it that way, and then the text will be really prominent. I think this would even work really well on your artwork actually. This is something you could consider. I'm not finishing your artwork here, I'm just giving you points which could improve it. This is something you could consider, like making the highlights on the bottom faces of the font really bright, and that could make it a little better. A few things I noticed with your art in general are areas like these. Like here, like to me it's really important if you're an artist, like if you want to seem professional, you should be able to color within the lines. I don't mean this in a bad way, but you know, it helps seem professional. Like if you show a client, a big client, your art and your coloring is all over the place, and like here the outline from like these outlines, they go into each other. Like you could spend a few minutes and like clean it up. That's just my personal like opinion that I tell you, because it just looks like a sketch. I know this might be part of your style, but I think this could improve your style a lot. I don't think those lines add anything to it. It might look more sketchy and cool for you, maybe that's your thinking, is what I'm saying. But like here, like just color it in, remove those lines. It only really takes a few more minutes, and overall the art will look much more professional, and it's not really that much work. Your lighting improved a lot. I personally think I might do one more. Like I think that these things are supposed to be metal. That's just my thinking. And I think the next step I want to do, and the final step, I want to give the overall shading another layer. Just want to add a little bit more texture, add a little bit more shininess and more metal look, so it looks like metal. And I hope it won't take long, but I'll see you when I'm done. So what do you guys think? I think this looks pretty cool. The difference is quite visible in my opinion, but where do I start explaining? Let's start with the text. The thing I explained earlier, I pretty much did it. This is what it looked at the beginning, and I basically added highlights on the edges, brighter on the bottom and a little bit from the top, so it stands out even more. Like let's check the values again. Like you can clearly see the top line, like the top edge of the letters, which is pretty good because you can clearly see the letters that way. It wouldn't be necessary maybe, but I still added it because it adds this metalish looking effect. I even added some darkness inside the letters, so they looked a little bit roughed up and a little bit more metalish, like a little bit contrast, like metallic is the right word, right? Yeah, let's scroll down. I added a little bit of a metal texture to the suit. Basically, like let's go into this area and explain it a little bit closer. Basically what I did, I added an edge around here that's called the Fresnel effect. On a specific angle, everything looks shiny, and since the arm bends around, I made it shiny on that edge. That way it looks more 3D-ish, like it's bending around. And I even added it on the hand, and on his hand, and on the butt here, and on all kinds of angles, like even here on the arm, like you can see how it looked like, how it looks now. Added a bit of shading here, because if it's metal, it would reflect, I don't know, something on the top that's darker, an area where there's no light maybe. I don't know where this is happening, where this is playing. This was very rough, but I still ended up adding some hair strands. Like they don't look good, but it gives you, like even here, I better don't show this. Like let's, yeah, it looks much better if you zoom out. Yeah, I added a few hair strands because hair is quite reflective, and I wouldn't even be afraid of going in and like adding complete white. Not that way, super tiny brush. Like adding a few complete bright white strands of hair. I don't think this is out of place at all. Like, yeah, here there is a strand of hair which wasn't really visible at all. I only saw it when I zoomed in, so I made it brighter. Okay, right now it looks a bit too bright. Maybe it's still too bright here, but you could like... Yeah. I also made the face dark, because if the light is coming from the bottom, this plane would be illuminated and this here would be darker. So that's what I did. I made it a little bit brighter here, darker here, brighter, darker here. The forehead is also a little bit darker. Just a few details like that. I could go into detail and add tons of more of these things. As I said, Cole, you got a lot better with shading lately, and I didn't want to knock it too much. It overall is pretty good. There's a few certain areas that you could maybe be more careful about or think about, like the nose and facial areas and where the light is coming from and which plane is hitting what, where there's light or not. But I personally would call this one finished. I think the difference is quite big. And let's move to another artwork, which is from my Discord server by Liam. He painted Beerus and I'm quite excited to get into it. Unfortunately, the other artwork will have to be a separate video, because this is going to be a very long video if I do it in one part. But I would gladly appreciate any feedback you have on this format, because for somebody it is maybe perfect, but you may be watching and think this is too boring, you want more time-lapse, you want more voiceover, you don't want to like every single step explained. I don't know what level you guys are on, so please definitely leave a comment and tell me what do you think and what I could improve. How many artworks per video you want, what tempo you want, what the perfect length for a video would be, because I personally think this is a good length, but I'm someone who likes to hear details. Maybe you guys don't want that, maybe you want something completely different. So let me know what you guys want, and be looking out for part 2 with Liam's artwork with Beerus. Turned out quite well. The video will be out shortly after this one, because they're basically both done. I just need to split them into 2. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like the subscribe button. Peace out.